Humanity is at its breaking point, with global warming threatening the survival of the human species. The United States of America are the founders and #1 leading country to make the human species interstellar beings. The world has no choice but to cooperate for the sake of its survival. 4 major country leaders came together at the White House and decided that each of these countries will offer up 15,000 of its brilliant minds and intellectuals, along with their families, to further the population of the human race on planet R, a solid rock planet much like our own, discovered by the Hubble telescope back in the 2050s. These countries' presidents will join them to keep the order and some semblance of authority.
While outside our Milky Way, Hubble found an interesting-looking planet with its own sun and moon. The planet's whole atmosphere seemed to have been made up of a never-ending storm of whirlwinds and lightnings. There's only one way in, and it is through a clear sky tunnel that cuts right through a part of the storm in the atmosphere, making it possible to reach the surface safely. The scientists call it the Eye of the R storm. Many years of research states that the planet has oxygen just like here on Earth, and there are wooded zones which seems to be the source for the breathable air. Not much are known about these wooded zones, but scientists hope to find out more once humans start occupying the land.
60,000 people, consisting of scientists, biologists, engineers, farmers, workers, and many other specialists, along with their families, were nominated to go build another civilization on planet R. 4 very unique and respected scientists were a part of this journey. The first was Dr. B. Strauss, a 23-year-old behavioral specialist. The second was Dr. S. Podunski, a 22-year-old biologist and fungus expert, with his wife and best friend, who are 21 and 26 respectively. Both engineers. Launch day went smoothly, and nearly 1 year later, the ship reached the planet. The Eye of the R storm made it possible and effortless to reach the surface of the planet with no issues. Now the journey can begin, and humanity has finally become an interstellar species. The future is now in the hands of these people, and the rest on Earth are counting on them to make it work. Today, everyone left the ship to breathe some fresh air and to start the building process of important structures like shelters, workspaces, and farmlands. Earth will not keep in touch with planet R from its side, only if they have breaking news or when the people here need help, to ask questions or to report something, or they make contact. Basic structures and farmlands are completely set up and ready to be used. Dr. Podunski, his wife, and friend shared a house, while Strauss had a place of his own. They never had a face-to-face conversation, but they had a small amount of knowledge about each other.
Very little is known of this planet, but basic information was given about each wooded zone before the ship landed. There are 4 major wooded zones: the red zone, the dark zone, the irradiated zone, and the unknown zone. Each has its own unique light level, possible dangers, and density of trees. The dark zone seems to be an active spot for fungal spores, plants, and vines. At the moment, nobody knows what effects they can have on the human body.
The people here on the planet are getting by just fine, and no issues or problems made itself known yet. Plans are in the works to build more advanced and bigger buildings, moving towards a cityscape. The city is up and running perfectly. A few problems arose in the building process, however, but nothing they couldn't handle. Everyone has a home or apartment to live in, and it is starting to feel as if we are back on Earth, with a different landscape and climate. Science is progressing with leaps and leaps each day, furthering the knowledge and grasp of the human minds. Earth is very quiet. They haven't made contact with us yet. Rumors are starting to surface, but it's mostly under the radar and away from the mainstream public. Everyone gathered in the city square for an emergency meeting. Earth made contact with us for the first time ever since we landed on planet R. Global warming has completely destroyed the planet. Cities once protected by mountains, cities on mountains, were all decimated and swept away by floods. And cities once safe from earthquakes were now rocked to its core, moved and broken by them. Life on Earth as we knew it ceased to exist, and we here on planet R are the last humans left. The city square was roaring with cries and screams of people, some grieving the loss of friends and family, some grieving the reality that we are now alone on an alien planet with no way back to our true home. The people that were put in charge of governing the planet struggled to retain order and control over the emotions of thousands of people, and after a while, everyone left for their homes to try and sleep off the tragedy. Yesterday was a train wreck of a day, and people are struggling to cope with all this pressure on them. Not all hope is lost, right? We just have to stand strong for their part and move on. It is our only hope. Dr. Podunski went out to the dark zone to gather some information about the area. He found a single tree in the middle of a clearing, and some sort of green light was emanating from its roots. As he got closer, he saw a patch of green mushrooms. He hesitantly threw a few of it into a paper bag and went with it back to his lab. After countless hours of digging and searching through research papers on earthly mushrooms, he came to the conclusion that these were not actually mushrooms, but fungi that latch onto each other, forming a solid shape of a mushroom. Many myths and legends state that this fungus can grant the person eating it supernatural powers and abilities like X-ray vision, telekinesis, increased strength, and even immortality. These delusional beliefs clouded his mind, and he took the fungus with him to his friend's house, where he convinced him to eat it with him. The taste was bitter sour, with hints of dust coming through as an aftertaste. A few minutes later, his friend fell to the ground, clearly shouting but in silence, clutching his chest. He flopped on the ground like a fish on dry land before inevitably dying. Horrified he might have the same outcome, he ran to the kitchen to grab a glass of salt water, to which he fell to the ground before reaching it. After a few hours, daylight started creeping into the windows. He jolted up in a pile of green sweat, confused and dizzy. He stumbled his way back to the living room to check up on his friend, but what he saw shocked him sober. His friend was dried and shriveled up like a raisin, with no traces of blood ever being in his veins. He ran back to the tree where he found the fungus, but when he got there it was missing. Not knowing what to do, he took his friend's body, carried it to the dark zone to bury. His wife saw him leaving the house with something big, and she followed him all the way to the cave. She was horrified to see that it was his friend, and that he was planning on keeping it all a secret, especially from her. She tried running back, but Podunski caught up to her and tackled her to the ground. He knocked her out of a rock nearby and dragged her body back to the cave. The coldness and bitterness in his heart led him to kill her in cold blood, burying her with his friend by a rock pillar in the cave. That day, he swore to never let anyone know what happened, and that he will deny anything and everything